Thanks for watching the YouTube replay of our virtual Green Drinks November, where we talked about total home control with solar integration. Joining us was Phil McNee from Demand Renewables and Ottawa homeowner Mark Asselstein to talk about solar installation. Enjoy this replay.
So we're a little past time. I want to welcome everybody to Green Drinks November 2021, and we're going to talk total home control with solar integration. And we've got our guest Phil McNee from Demand Renewables, who's going to be going deep on solar. We've also got Ottawa homeowner Mark Asselstein, and he's going to talk about the process of installing solar from the homeowner's perspective. Afterwards, we're going to have lots of time for questions. So if questions come up during the presentations, please add them into chat, and I will quarterback them over to the presenters. At the end of the call, we'll do a little bit of a general discussion. So if folks want to come on and chat a little bit, basically raise your hand, I'll unmute you, and you can ask your question directly, and we'll talk a little bit about how we can speed the adoption of solar around Ottawa and beyond. So welcome, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, I am Nick Hebb with SmartNet Alliance, and the Alliance is a group of businesses and organizations who collaborate on projects and initiatives to accelerate Canada's transition to a sustainable economy. So for more information on SNA, please consult our website, and I'll put that into chat. And be sure to check out our members pages as well to learn more about all our members are doing. We've got quite a few members in solar, as well as home builders, energy advisors, runs the gamut there. So do check out our member pages and you can filter down. So tonight we're talking solar home and solar integration, total home control. And first up, we've got Phil McNee, who is the CEO and co-founder of Demand Renewables Performa PV. He is a product knowledge specialist and an expert in project management, the Ontario energy market, and commercial and residential solar. His passion is changing the future for the next generation. To be part of the solution to mankind's greatest threat in history is what drives him every day. That's awesome, Phil. Thanks so much. It's also why he tells every little kid he meets that he's a superhero fighting for climate action. Super Phil. So Phil, come on in. We'll give you the round of applause. Remind everyone to share your questions into chat during the presentations, and then we'll circle back. Thanks so much for joining us, Phil. And I hear that you're going to sort of talk about a recent announcement from Hydro Ottawa as well. Not to steal your thunder, but nice to see that some things are changing. We've been advocating for that at SmartNet Alliance for a couple of years now. So why don't you share your screen, take it away, and talk about solar.
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, you're coming through loud and clear. Thanks, Phil.
Perfect. Just give me a second here. Share some. Okay, so the big announcement, as Nick just kind of alluded to, is the fees we were fighting with the City of Ottawa and Hydro Ottawa. So Hydro Ottawa had a fee of $14 a month for net metering, which was kind of egregious. We install all across the province, and it was the only jurisdiction that charged those fees. And essentially what they were doing was kind of profiting off the back of people who were installing solar. So if you were to save maybe $3,000, $3,500 over 25 years on the delivery portion of your hydro bill, they were charging you $4,200 just simply for doing solar. So we've been fighting that at City Council with SmartNet Alliance, with an advocacy group of our own clients who are emailing their City Council and emailing the CEO of Hydro Ottawa. And this week, Hydro Ottawa has reversed course and are no longer going to charge a monthly fee for net metering, which is great for the industry. It's great for us, and it aligns more with, as a city, what our goals are. So we're happy with that. I'm going to turn my camera off right now just while I do the presentation because it could tend to lag. I live in Osgoode and the internet isn't great out here. So just give me a second. So a little bit about us, Demand Renewables. We do residential and commercial installations of solar and battery. We've done some natural gas generation for large manufacturers as well. So in the residential space, we've installed from 5 kilowatts to 70 kilowatts from different homeowners, ground mount, roof mount. And in the commercial space, our clients are farming, manufacturing, distribution centers, and we recently just were awarded a contract for a 600 kilowatt project with one of the utilities. So we're pretty proud of that as well. So we're well versed in the market across the province, technology that's available, as well as the different LDCs or hydro companies and what their rules and regulations are. And we're here to fight constantly. You know, we don't just take no for an answer when the hydro companies tell us something. We tend to take it up the board and force them to have conversations with, our manufacturing partners, etc. But let's just jump into it. What we're going to start with is a 3-minute video, because I feel it's important to highlight what's happened in the past year and kind of why we're all here. So it's about 3 minutes long. Enjoy, and then we'll get kicked off.
When we look back on these days in the future, we want to be able to say that we did the actions that were right, the actions that were important, because I think it's very difficult to say, if you go, say, 20, 30, 40 years in the future, what do you say to your kids or your grandkids?
The year 2078, I will celebrate my 75th birthday. If I have children, maybe they will spend that day with me. Maybe they will ask me about you. Maybe they will ask why you didn't do anything while there still was time to act. You say you love your children above all else, and yet you're stealing their future in front of their very eyes.
The scientists all say that these bad things are going to happen. It's like 97%. So like say, well, to your grandkids or kids, like, well, did nobody tell you? No, it's like, no, everyone was telling us. So why didn't you do anything? What's the answer? I think it's very important that we do something.
So now that we kind of hit you in the feels and we have an idea of what motivates our organization, and hopefully you guys who are looking into solar and making EV and doing these renewable changes in your life. So we're going to talk about solar, but everything else that goes along with that as well, and kind of protecting you for the future. So it starts with what is net metering, which is what the program everybody is looking at. Net metering is a billing arrangement with you and your hydro company that allows you to lower your hydro bill using solar. And how does it work? These solar panels convert energy from the sun into electricity. That electricity is in direct current and needs to be converted from DC to AC to be used in the home. That's done through an inverter, which then feeds into the main panel of the home, and you use that energy that you're producing. Any excess energy that you're producing, so let's say you're using 15 kilowatt hours right now and you're producing 30, that extra 15 would go through a bidirectional meter that's installed by the hydro company and into the grid for a credit. And then you receive a credit for every kilowatt hour you send to the grid based on your billing arrangement. And you also charge them for portions of your delivery as well as the regulatory charges. So I call that DC to AC solar, which is pretty much what most of the Canadian market is installing, but solar can be so much more than that. And that's where that total home comes into play. It's not just about DC to AC anymore. It's about using the best technology that's available and why we use it. So decision proof and future proof. Essentially, we want to ensure that our clients have the most advanced tech that they can easily add with one branded solution. So whether it's at the time of install, you want to add battery, EV charging, advanced monitoring or more, that could be done today, that could be done in the future. And it's an easy add-on to a solution that's already in the home once you've installed solar. All branded, all built through one company. So it's all one app, one system to manage everything. So essentially, instead of putting solar on your roof now, you're creating a full electric infrastructure of your home and being able to monitor that. This is new technology and it isn't without its hiccups. But again, we are very in tune and tied together with the executive teams of our manufacturing partners. So they hold our hands and they're helping us with any issues that we do have. And it all starts with the Energy Hub inverter. So this is the brains of the whole operation. It does all of the heavy lifting. And things that you can add into this, so it's the inverter, but there's also a power optimizer on the back of every single panel, which turns it into sort of an independent smart panel. You can add battery storage backup, which is DC coupled. We'll get into a little bit later. You can also add a gas generator. You can do hot water preheat. So you can preheat your hot water tank using excess solar energy, and you get a full snapshot of your energy usage. So especially in Hydro Ottawa, and I think Mark's talking later, he can allude to some of the issues he had with his billing arrangement and getting it set up. And just the lack of kind of reporting that you get. So some jurisdictions like Hydro 1, they'll tell you, how many kilowatt hours of credits you got, how many delivery credits you have, and how many regulatory credits you have. Whereas Hydro Ottawa just lumps it into one line called net metering credits. So being able to track all of your energy helps you to kind of vet the credits that they're giving you and ensure that you're getting the right credits. And you can do solar. You can connect 3 inverters on 6 batteries. We are currently doing a 70 kilowatt ground mount project with 11.4 kilowatt inverters, the Energy Hub inverters, and 5 of the 16 kilowatt hour prime LG prime batteries. So this person has a massive footprint, but he has a 4-year-old son and he wants to live a certain lifestyle. He's worked hard. He has the money to live how he wants to live, but his energy needs are huge. And he knows that he's doing a disservice to his son for the future. So what we're doing for them is a full 100% offset of their energy over the year. And that's going to cover the house as well. So their house is heated floors, a pool, hot tub, wine cellar, etc. So it's got a very, very large draw. They have 2 EVs, and this will offset all of their energy for the year and basically zero out their carbon footprint because their vehicles are also EV. So stay on when the grid is off. Life is unpredictable. Your energy shouldn't be. So weather any grid outage by installing our advanced battery solution. So this is DC coupled. You're probably all very familiar with AC coupled storage, like the Tesla Powerwall. So what that means is that the energy is produced in DC on the roof, and it comes down and it goes through the inverter, and it's converted from DC to AC and goes into the main panel of the home. When you want to fill that battery up, that energy has to be converted from AC back to DC to go into that battery. And then to come out of that battery, it has to be changed from DC back to AC. So there's a lot of losses there with that conversion. And you can't do things like capture your clipping, which we'll get into in a second. So this is a DC coupled solution. So what this means is that the energy comes off the roof in DC, goes straight through the inverter in DC, fills up the battery in DC, comes out of the battery in DC, and only gets converted to AC once when it's going through that inverter. And the SolarEdge inverter is the most efficient in the world at a 99% efficiency for DC to AC. So you essentially only lose 1% of your storage or power or efficiencies with a DC coupled. And then solutions where some people don't want to spend the money for having multiple batteries, but they have a large load and they're concerned about having multiple day carryover. You can actually couple in a gas generator, like a Generac generator, into the solution. You can have it work in tandem with the batteries. So if you have a massive load and the power is going to be out for a few days, both of these technologies can work together. Or you can simply have it where the generator automatically turns itself on when the batteries hit a certain percentage to fill themselves back up. The system also reads the weather, so you can say, hey, if there's a major storm coming or if there's a weather event coming that may knock out the power, let's ensure that the battery's full and the generator is ready to go if that does happen. And then clipping. So a lot of times what we do is we put more DC on top of the AC. So what that means is, like in Ontario, you're limited to 10 kilowatts AC for a residential project. And if you want to go bigger than that, There's about a $3,500 application fee, and then there's a couple $1,000s in engineering costs that go along with that. With the Energy Hub solution, you can do a 200% overbuild. So what that allows is 20 kilowatts of panels on top of a 10 kilowatt inverter, which is amazing. It helps us to kind of get around those breaking points, because there are a lot of homes in Ontario that need more than 10 kilowatts. So what's interesting is when you do that overbuild, you are dumping energy, and we let you know before the system's installed, this was the potential, but you're going to dump 6 or 8 or 10% of that energy. And what's interesting with this system, because it's a DC coupled, you can say to the system, I want you to capture my bell curve or my clipping. So instead of just dumping that energy, it'll take it and divert it into the storage solution so that you can keep that. That is not possible with an AC system, because if your inverter says 10 kilowatts as its nameplate, that's the maximum amount of power that it can output. So you can never capture that clipping with an AC coupled battery solution. So that's one of the reasons why we use this one. It's so advanced. What's interesting and amazing actually is that in 2018, SolarEdge acquired a company called Kokum. They're a top 5 battery manufacturer in the world. And they've just recently, in the last few weeks, released their own battery. So now there's a branded battery to work with with their a full branded solution, battery included. So we're moving away from the LG Prime batteries into the SolarEdge batteries. Make a clean getaway. Drive on sunshine with our smart EV charger. So the Energy Hub, again, this is something that you can do at the time of installation or in the future, or 3 years down the road, you get an EV and you want to charge it. You want a level 2 charger, so you're not just running with a regular plug. That's something that you can add in. We're one of the first groups in Ontario to install this solution this summer. It's new. The Electrical Safety Authority kind of had a little bit of a brain meltdown when the reps came, because they thought we were MacGyvering level 2 charges into the inverter, but it's actually designed to work that way. So drive on sunshine, you can charge on 100% renewable energy using excess solar mode. You can use solar boost, which is pulling from the grid and pulling from your solar to give you the fastest charge. And then the big point with this is the saving money, getting your EV and PV at the same time. So if you look at the inverter, the picture that you're seeing on the screen right now, the level 2 charger on the left is plugged into the inverter. If you were to install solar with another branded level 2 charger, what you'd have to do is have your electrician run a 240 volt into the garage or wherever you're putting the charger, and you have to have breaker space in your panel for that as well. And then you have to pay an electrician to install it and pull an ESA ticket. So the costs going towards doing a level 2 charger are quite expensive. With this solution, it's actually powered by the inverter. So if you need to pull from the grid, the inverter itself actually pulls from the main panel. So the whole solution is behind one breaker. So we put a 60 amp breaker on a 10 kilowatt inverter, and that covers both the inverter and the level 2 charger. And then again, this is all controlled through one app, and it saves money in the long run. And then the industry standards, 2 to 4 years for warranties. SolarEdge has the best warranties in the industry for many of their products. So this also has an industry-leading 5-year warranty, and it has a 9.6 kilowatt output, which is some of the highest as far as level 2s go. Handheld convenience. So what you're seeing here on the right, I'm just going to click a play. This is a customer's home. This was yesterday in the Ottawa area. I'm just going to move the control so I can see what I'm doing here. Sorry. So what you're seeing right now is you're seeing that it was producing 4.1 kilowatts. There was a split of 3.62 kilowatts going to the grid and 0.48 was in the house. This month, they've produced 322 kilowatt hours. Year to date, they were installed in August, I believe. They've produced over 2 megawatt hours. And we'll just scroll through here. So now we're looking at their energy balance. So it's showing us the split production, where that production went. 8.2 kilowatts went to the house, the rest went to the grid. And then you can see your production charts as well. So you see what you're producing, what you're exporting. You can control your car as well. They have a level 2 charger. So if you toggle into the app, it'll pull up and they can go in and they can say that they want to do solar boost or control it. And this is a full layout of the system as well. So they can see all of the panels, the health of the system, etc. So if you add storage, it's controlled in here. If you add hot water, it's controlled in here. If you add the future, which is relays and switches, it will all be controlled through one app, either on your handheld or your desktop. What you're seeing right there is the mobile application. The desktop application is a little bit more in depth. So what is the process of going solar? I just zoom through these things because I feel like this is more of a conversation than a presentation. So we're going to go through it all quickly and then open it up for questions. I feel like it's more impactful when we're talking to each other as opposed to me just chirping at you. But the process of going solar, I think, is a lot of people's minds. They're unsure of cost. They're unsure of what the first step is. They're unsure of what to do. So we've created kind of a walkthrough of solar. So the first step in the process is determining if your home is even good for solar and how much clean energy you can expect to produce in a year. Not every house is solar positive. I'd say maybe 10 or 15% of the homes that the leads that we get, the people that are interested, their house isn't good for solar. We don't just tell you, hey, your house isn't good for solar. We book a screen share with you. We walk through the design and we explain to you why your house isn't good for solar so that you're not left hanging. Step 2 is an in-depth look into your electricity use, how it's used, when it's used, and plans for future use. So there's a lot of people who are installing today, but they know that next year I'm getting a hot tub, we're putting a pool in, we're going to get 2 EVs in the future. So we can kind of take, based on what they think their need is going to be, and oversize that so that they can have that production ready for them the next couple of years. It makes more sense to oversize the system today if you know that your usage is going to go up than it is adding to your system in the future. So we provide a 25-year cost analysis of what it would cost to stay with your hydro company, and then what it would cost to go solar. And this is all put into a proposal that we walk you through during a virtual presentation. That presentation will cover the system design, why we choose the products we choose, how the system would mount to your type of roof, whether it's steel, shingle, annual energy offset, so your production versus your consumption, carbon reduction, system monitoring, turnkey pricing, ROI, and timelines. Step 3. You've agreed to move forward and we start the application process with your hydro company. Some companies have a 15-page application, some are 2 pages long, and that application is to check for capacity on the grid and to provide the technical and safety details of your project and its components. The biggest shock to most people is that just because you want to do solar doesn't mean you can do solar. There are situations where there's issues for capacity on the grid and you can't move forward. What's kind of neat and interesting about that is like Hydro 1 territory have kind of 4 fails that you can have for capacity constraints when you check capacity. And we were kind of sick of telling our clients like, hey, you failed the capacity, you failed the capacity. So we started reaching out to the executive team at Hydro 1, and then we were able to facilitate a call with the executive team for Solar Edge out of California and the directors of engineering for Hydro 1. And what that's led to is some of our clients who were previously turned down are able to move forward as a test facility because the inverter that we sell is so smart. So when your application is approved, you'll be provided with approval documents and we can move to the next step. And we'll handle all of that paperwork, planning, communication with the hydro company and your municipality to ensure that you get a swift approval. Step 4, we're knocking on your door and it's time for a site plan review. So we visit with our team to determine the best way to blend the system and its components in the most visually appealing way. We want the system to look good, not just on the roof, but where people are going to see any parts of it. So conduit, cable runs, inverter placement, disconnect, etc. And we try and schedule it for the same day, but on or around this day, a licensed structural engineer will pop by to perform a structural analysis of the roof. And then all of that communication, organizing, and payments, again, are handled by our team. Once we have a plan in place, we move on to step 5, which is your installation. It's also during this step that the Electrical Safety Authority visits the site and sign off that everything was done to code. We take pictures throughout the process in case they want them for your file, and they're the ones that send the approval to your hydro company, who then will schedule the installation of your bidirectional meter. And again, our team handles this whole process and any costs are included in the turnkey price. Step 6, turn on the system, start producing energy, sit back and enjoy all the environmental and financial benefits of your decision. And now that you know the process, this is something that you can do. We'll put a link to this in the chat. If you'd like to get a quote from us, you can go through this yourself and then you click yes, I would, and it'll just ask you for some basic information so we can get the process started for you. So that's pretty much the end of my presentation. I'm going to open it up here because like I said, I prefer to have this as a conversation instead of just me talking directly at you. I'm sure you have questions based on some of the stuff we've gone over. So I don't know if you're going to hand it over to people to speak, or are we just doing it in the chat there, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy if folks want to kind of come on and unmute themselves, but they have to raise their hand so I can kind of see them, because we've got 70 folks. So I've got a few different questions in chat. Let's go through those. And then if folks have any follow-ups or any other questions that they want to ask directly to Phil, raise your hand and I can unmute you. So Corey was wondering, is net zero the only arrangement in Canada?
Net metering?
I think that's what he meant, but Corey, maybe you want to jump on to just clarify your question there, because I wasn't sure. I think he meant net metering as well.
It is the only, I mean, you can do stuff like load displacement, where you know, you're not sending any energy to the grid because you're consuming it all in the house, but that's typically a commercial arrangement, not a residential one. And we have an amazing net metering program here. We get a 1-for-1 credit based on our billing arrangement. A lot of different jurisdictions in the US don't have that, or it's like a half a credit or a smaller amount of money. So you kind of have to game the system in the US using storage and playing around with when you're producing that energy, when you're using that energy, etc. So we, you know, as much as, you know, our political class is pushing for climate change, we haven't really made that much impact, but we do have an amazing net metering program.
That's great. He's just following up. Do you know in Manitoba, what is their policy there? Do you have any idea of Manitoba? Maybe he's coming in from Manitoba there, or wondering. I
think his dad is looking at a system. Is he saying yeah there? So I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure across the board, across the different provinces, we have the same net metering arrangement. They may have different programs in place there, but it's a simple, you know, if you get us, we've done projects in Saskatchewan as well. So if you can tell us who your hydro company is and whereabouts you're located, it shouldn't take us too long to figure out what their net metering program is, and if they have any incentives in that province or that area, or through their hydro companies, etc.
Great. Well, no, that's great. We're happy that this is being broadcast across Canada, and that folks in different provinces are looking at that. So hopefully that helps answer some of Corey's and his family's questions there. Mark had a question, but I know Pete jumped on that. So we'll go over to Oscar's question. Is it common that you sell all produced kilowatts to the grid and then get a discount on your bill instead of having the solution that a part goes directly into the home?
There used to be something called the feed-in tariff, where was you installing solar, and then all of that energy went straight to the grid, and you got a certain amount of money depending on when you signed up for the program. I hate that program. Me and Pete, my business partner, we both hate that program. We never did the microfit. Starting 2017, when everyone was still doing it, we were doing net metering. It's not surprising that conservatives hate solar when you ran a program that paid people 80 cents a kilowatt hour to produce solar, when the average homeowner at that time was paying 7 cents a kilowatt hour for their energy. That was kind of a boondoggle, and it's put a lot of pressure on the industry. So while that, you know, may have helped with the adoption of solar, it also caused conflict with different political parties and different neighbors, because people believe in different things. And so it was available, but now the net metering is the way to go. And you're kind of greenwashing what you're doing. You know, if you're installing solar for a feed-in tariff and selling all that energy to the grid, and then claiming that you're a greener person, you're not really a greener person. You're still consuming all of your energy from the grid. You're still using your fossil fuel vehicle, etc. So we prefer a net metering arrangement where the energy is consumed by the homeowner, and then the excess energy you get a credit for, which is amazing. It's sort of like using the grid as your storage.
Amazing. Yeah, no, for sure. It's a great system. Pamela had a bit of a generic solar question. How do you ensure the addition of rooftop solar doesn't create leaks in the roof with asphalt shingles or steel roof? Maybe talk a little bit about that for folks that are wondering.
So when we mount on a shingle roof, we use a product called the RT Mini, which is guaranteed not to leak for 20 years. It has like a peel-off butyl strip on it, which sticks to the roof, which is the same material they use to adhere your shingles to the roof in roofing products. And then there's 5 screws that go in. Each of those screws is dipped in a sealant, and then there's a little bead of sealant that goes around the foot as well. And that's guaranteed by that company not to leak for 20 years. And this is a roofing company out of Japan that's been around for decades and decades and decades, so it's worth the warranty. There's some really cool videos as well on YouTube where they're installing them underwater, so you can see underneath that it's not even leaking while it's being submerged in water and being installed because of the butyl strip that's there. And then on a standing seam metal roof, we actually use it's like a clamp that pinches to the seam that lifts up. So there's actually no roof penetrations. And then if you have some of the newer steel roofs, which our client who's talking this evening, Mark Asselstein, he has a metal roof, which is like the metal shingles. So it's not standing seam, it's little shingles. And for that one, we go through the shingle into the lag bolt, into the trusses. And again, those are guaranteed not to leak. They have a big rubber seal on them when they pinch down.
Well, that's great, and we'll hear a little bit more from Mark as well in a bit. Brent, I guess, just had a general comment, but it may be a bit of a question. He says when they did his installation, Hydro One restricted the capacity of their solar cell install. So is that something that you're still seeing?
That's what we're talking about, where you, just because you want solar doesn't necessarily mean you can get solar. Hydro One is the trickiest of the bunch, and it's understandable why. They have a massive grid. You're talking about massive lines. You know, pretty much 90% of the city of Ottawa can easily be connected to solar. All of our transmission stations, it's one core, right? And all of our energy is coming, so it's easier to manage that than it is, you know, in the country, in a rural area where the lines are very, very long, and they're concerned about voltage swings and whatnot, and then issues happening to the feeders. And that's where, again, we had clients like this person in the chat who mentioned that have been capacity constrained or just straight turned down for solar and are now moving forward as a test site with Hydro One, because again, we were able to put them on the phone with the executives at Solar Edge and talk about their issues. And when they learned about what their issues were, they were able to say, listen, we can program our inverters to hit whatever parameters that you want. Just tell us what those parameters are and we'll hit that. So now we're running these as test facilities. So what may happen is they put the parameters in place, and maybe your system's producing energy and it's reading a voltage swing or it's hitting a parameter that Hydro One doesn't want. It'll curtail your system. So you may not get as much production that day. The moral of the story there is, though, you're producing something where previous to that you could produce nothing. So the fact that they're curtailing it and stuff is painful for some people to swallow, but the option is no solar at all. And surprisingly enough, like Hydro One is being really progressive when it comes to renewable energy now. I don't know if you guys know this, but they actually partnered with Ontario Power Generation for the Ivy network. They're going to have the best fast charging network across the province. The first people that do it are going to be Hydro One and the Ontario Power Generation. So they're being really progressive, and like I'm on the Ontario Energy Board's working group for distributed energy, and some of the guys from Electra and Hydro One are on there, and they're really progressive. They're looking for ways to support the industry, and they're looking for ways to put their fears away. I mean, they obviously have concerns about the grid and safety, and if we can get around those, we're going to see more adoption of solar.
Fabulous. No, it's great. It's something to consider, right? You know, you may want to do solar, but you may not be able to, but nice to have those workarounds, and, you know, nice that you guys at Demand are able to offer that. Alistair's wondering about time of use. Will time of use be available for solar in the future? He knows that with Hydro Ottawa requires a tiered rate. So talk a little bit about those time of use.
So they all switch to tiered. Every hydro company moves you to tiered billing when you do solar. I personally think the reason for it is because you would need a smaller system to offset all of your energy. So if they kept you, because your build and your credits are billed the same way that your tiered is used. So the first 600 kilowatt hours in the summer that you send to the grid, you charge them the 9.8 cents, the lower tier. Everything above that, you charge them the higher tier. Now, if they were to keep you on time of use, all of your energy production is during mid-peak and on-peak, right? So let's say you needed a 10 kilowatt system to offset 100% of your energy on tiered. On time of use, you might only need a 7 kilowatt system because it's a billing arrangement, right? So you're sending your credits during your billing arrangement at that time, and that's why they pull you back onto. That's my opinion. We can't get an answer as to why they came across and did that, but it seems likely that that's the reason. Was a few years ago was this deterrent for solar.
Interesting. Denise is wondering, does it make sense to install the solar panels at the time of installing a new roof?
If your roof needs to be redone, like the picture you're seeing on the screen right now, That was done 3 weeks after the roof went on. So that's a new standing seam metal roof that was installed in July. A couple weeks later, we put the solar on top of it. So if your roof doesn't look healthy, we're not going to put solar on it. If your shingles are in rough shape and it looks like it's going to be redone, we have to be transparent with you. Like you're going to have to change your roof at some point. These panels are going to be on there for 25 years. There's going to be a cost associated with that. You have to pull the system off. You got to put the system back on. Something that people don't seem to grasp as well is that all of your mounting underneath would need to be replaced as well. Not your actual rails, but the pieces like that click into your asphalt roof that use that butyl strip. When we rip those off to re-roof, they can't be reused because the butyl strip has been used already. So there's costs associated with it. So it is the best idea is if your roof is going to need to be changed in the next 5 years or so is to do it before the installation. We can help you with that. Basically what we do in different areas of the province is we just bid it out for you. We work with you, we put a plan together. We bid it out to a couple of roofing companies. We work with you, kind of check who they are, check Google reviews, ask for that kind of stuff. And then you deal direct. So you see that we're not marking it up at all.
That's great. No, for sure. That's fabulous. We definitely want more and more folks to be installing solar. So that's great. So it's November and we're only probably a week or two away from the white stuff, which some people love and some people hate. But Pamela was just wondering about Ottawa and winter snowfall, any solar generation during the winter. So maybe just talk a little bit about, solar during the winter, what folks have to consider over those colder months.
Yeah, so in our proposals, we actually use 90% snow losses in January and February. That's like a worst case scenario year, but it could happen. We used to put in our proposals 65% snow losses, and then last year happened. In Ottawa last year, we have clients who have roofs that had a 20-degree slope. They had 2 arrays, one south facing, one west facing, and that snow stuck. It came heavy, and then it gets really cold, and it turns to like crispy ice. And it's out there for a long time. So when we do a proposal, we prepare you for the fact that some winters you're going to have next to zero production. And that's why our net metering program is the best, because it's a 1-for-1 credit. And what we can do, the goal is to offset. If your roof would allow for 100% offset, we shoot to do that between March and November. And then anything that you get in the winter would kind of be a bonus. But if people tell you that, snow's going to slide right off, that's not reality. The snow will stick. It will come off depending on the house. It depends on your house as well. Like, where's the wind coming? Is there a vent near there, which is going to catch a drag, which is going to cause snow to build up and create like a snow dam? These are things that can happen. So it's best to prepare yourself for the worst generation for the winter at 90%. And then if you produce, if you only have 75% losses, you're happy, right? But we prepare you for a poor production in the winter. And the other thing is, the sun is super low in the sky. The days are extremely short. We're very overcast here in Ottawa, especially in Ontario. It's very dark and cloudy from December 21st on. So we kind of prep you for that reality. It's also one of the reasons why it's difficult to go fully off grid in Ontario. A lot of people say, oh, I hate hydro. I want to get off grid. The problem with off grid is you have to take a look at what's the load of the whole house if everything was on December 21st, which is the worst day for solar production. And then you have to design a battery system that's going to be able to output that energy. And then you have to design a solar array that's going to be able to power all of those batteries. It's very, very expensive to do an off-grid, and that's why, again, we have such an amazing program here in Ontario.
That's great. So Owen's looking at pairing it with a high-performance water heater, something similar to Rheem Proterra. Is there a way to integrate this with the inverter so that the resistive elements only come on when there is excess solar production?
I'm not sure what his water heater is, but
the
SolarEdge.
Proterra.
Yeah, I'd have to take a look online and see it, learn about it. But if it's a typical water heater, you just get a submersible heater. Like, it's like a little element that goes on the top of your water heater, and there's a box from SolarEdge that plugs in, and you essentially tell the system to also take some of my excess energy and divert that to my water heater through the day, and that'll keep the water temperature in the water tank a little bit warmer, and then you're basically preheating it, and then you're using less energy or natural gas or however it is that you power this thing.
Great, great, great. We'll maybe open it up for some follow-up shortly there. We've got Lynn, who's hoping to install solar after replacing the roof with a metal one. Are there any things she needs to consider when looking at new roofs to ensure no issues adding solar later?
Nope. I mean, it's up to you. If you don't want something that has a penetration into the decking underneath, then go with a standing seam roof like the one you see in the picture. Because then it just pinches onto each seam. The seams come up about an inch. Well, it depends on the brand the roof that you use, but they're about an inch high, and we just clamp right to the side of it, and then there's no penetrations in that roof. If you don't mind roof penetrations and you do a metal roof, we can do the same thing we did for Mark. So any solution, there's a mount for.
Fabulous. Oscar's wondering, do you feel the provincial and federal governments are supportive when it comes to transition to solar renewable energy? I know this is a bit of a hot topic.
Nick's
we only
like,
have,
Phil,
we only have another hour.
All right, they asked, Nick. They asked.
What do you wish they would do to further help? And we know that the net metering fee is gone now. So what else are we thinking that they need to do to help speed the adoption?
Well, you know, it's the roadblocks that are in place, number one. Number two, we need stuff like Doug Ford yesterday saying we're going to be the EV mining manufacturing hub of North America. And then today saying there's no way I'm giving a EV rebate for $100,000 vehicles for millionaires. Well, you know, you're talking about a very small portion of the people that want to buy EVs, and not every EV is $100,000. And I look at that and I go, do you think that a person like Elon Musk, who was already saying, yeah, if you guys can do like net zero cobalt, I'll buy it from you. Do you think somebody like that's going to want to support an industry in a province that doesn't support their industry? Like, it makes no sense. And the federal government, you know, and it's not just solar, it's climate change in general. So I read a CBC News article a week and a half ago that in 2015, Canada and every other bunch of Western countries committed to $100 billion to help impoverished countries, or whatever you want to call them, to offset the effects of climate change. And not one country has put $1 into that $100 billion fund. That was in 2015. So we've all talked a massive game. But since 2015, we've bought a pipeline. We have the worst EV credits. If you look, it's any vehicle over $55,000, you can't get an EV credit from the federal government. That's ridiculous. I'm going to stop because I could just see Nick starting to sweat over there, but I don't think there's enough support. I think that you're constantly being told, especially the solar industry, you know, if you want to work, you got to work in your own market. You got to stand up on your own two legs. You don't need incentives, which is fine. But it's amazing to me that just as solar became on par with the cost of energy, the provincial government decided to subsidize our electric rates. And those subsidies are costing us billions and billions and billions of dollars. Financial Accountability Office of Ontario said that our rates have to go up by about 7% a year just to service the debt on that. So why are we subsidizing hydro bills and then telling the industry that can help people lower their hydro bills that they need to stand up on their own two legs without subsidies, while at the same time we're subsidizing the competition, which is hydro? So there's a lot of weird back and forth. There's a lot of, you know, patting ourselves on the back and talking a good game. But I'm going to be honest with you, it's up to you guys. Nothing is going to get done. We can't even make a decision on getting together on a vaccine. You think we're going to tackle something as big as climate change? We're divided right down the middle, 50-50%. It's on us now, and climate change is here. Like that video that we watched, that's real. And if you're hit with a solution like that, if you're hit in the path of one of those things, your house is pretty much toast, or you're going to have a massive insurance claim. But the reality is we're not going to hit that 1.5 mark. We're going to have this extreme weather. And what happens when you're 10 kilometers away from that flood and you're out of power for 10 days? What are you going to do? How are you going to survive if there's power outages and floods? And you know, you're not in the direct path, but they're affecting you. And the further out you get, the longer you're without power. So if the city of Ottawa were to be out of power, and Osgood and Manotick and further and further and further, they would tackle the city of Ottawa first, and then they move out. So the people in the rural communities could typically be out of power for days and days and days. So I don't believe that the governments are going to hit the 1.5 mark. I believe that it's up to us as individuals. The best thing that you can ever do for the planet is to do solar and buy an electric vehicle. You know, we have to be transparent in Ontario. I know there's people from across the country, but in Ontario, we have an extremely clean grid. So solar is very effective. It can shave, you know, 2,000 pounds of carbon emissions off of your CO2 off of your footprint a year. But adding that EV to that is huge. You add EV, you add solar, you are a champion for the planet, and you've done more in two little steps than all the governments can't seem to get together and do.
Yeah, and let's
Sorry
throw the heat pump in there too, just
True,
to talk about your
absolutely.
heating. And we're talking about that next Tuesday with some of our members, continuing on our home retrofit series. So hopefully folks can join us.
I think Mark just pulled the trigger on a heat pump too. We'll get him to mention it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got someone, just to switch gears a little bit here, but nice, great conversation and good to chat about all this. And if the power goes out, Phil, I thought we were all going to your place.
Come on over, folks.
We'll chat about that. So we've got someone who came in a bit later, but they have a question regarding recycling. Their panels have been up for a while now, and they want to know what happens with the panels once they're done. They contain rare earth metals and are very high quality components. What sort of recycling programs do we have for solar panels? If there's no recycling, then how green are solar panels really? So talk a bit about that.
So I actually had a farmer ask me this the other day. He said we're doing solar. There's some funding for ag, so we're doing it with them. And he said, what do I tell people? Because they keep giving me trouble about the recycling of the panels. And I said, I refer them to this article from 2018, and I sent in the link, and I refresh people about how capitalism works. So in France, in 2018, they opened the first solar panel recycling plant. So Europe has panels that have been out for years and years and years. They have a huge market there. And that market's starting out at probably about $456 million a year, looking to go up by 2040 to about $15 billion a year. So that's how I know that recycling of solar panels will happen, because of capitalism, because there's guys out there that want to create this industry. This is when we talk about the green economy, this is what we're talking about. When you have people who want to make the life cycle of products like this, and they can make money at the same time, that's a win, right? So, they grind down the glass, they grind down all of it, they pull all the components out, and they turn it into a dust, and then they sell that to, LG, Canadian Solar, Q-Cells, and they reuse that stuff in their panels. So we don't really have a facility yet in North America for that, but you can bet that that is coming.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, something to think about, and a great question. Thanks so much for asking it there. So I've got about 3 more, and then I want to have a bit of time for Mark to talk about his experience, because we want to know what it's like from a homeowner's perspective. So a couple more here, a few more. Owen's wondering, where are we at with EV to home, assuming capable bi-directional EVs, to supplement or replace a permanent battery installation? I know there's some pilot projects going on in Toronto where the cars are powering the building. So have you guys started to see that, or is that something on your radar?
So that is actually the Ontario Energy Board, the working group. We made that one of our priorities at the end of August. It's going to be amazing. So vehicle to building is going to be great. So it may make a dent to the storage market, but then I had a really great conversation with a client of mine, Corey, who has a Tesla. So he's got an 85 kilowatt hour backup battery in his driveway. And I said, would you do the storage, or would you just wait for the back end? And his response was this, that, I would put one battery in, because I know that if the power were to fail, from March until October, that one battery in sunshine is enough to sustain me. And I don't want to keep pulling off of my car, but I would want to have the vehicle to building capability for the winter when there's a 4-day snowstorm. I'm getting no solar production. My 10 kilowatt hour battery is drained in 2 days. He'd want that availability. And with the Solar Edge Level 2 charger, it's part of their framework. It's mentioned in their frequently asked questions. As the automakers come out with backwards compatible, it's going to be a firmware upgrade. They'll push it to the charger, and you'll just be pulling it from that way. So there are reasons why you might want to have battery storage. The other thing is the power fails. You're in Toronto, your wife and family or whatever, whoever's at home, you have the battery with you. So that can be a little bit tricky. So, but what it will take away the need for is people putting in multiple batteries to be able to carry themselves if there's a storm in really low production months like December.
Absolutely. No, it's great to start thinking about how this is all going to work together, and it's pretty neat to see the technology going. So Alistair's wondering about battery systems. Is there any programs being worked on to make battery systems more cost effective? I mean, I think just in general, the technology is getting, more and more inexpensive, but talk a little bit about, the cost of batteries and where you see it going.
Yeah, the cost of batteries are still substantial, right? Especially in the Canadian marketplace, we're very small. Some of their markets, their battery pricing may be more aggressive, but it's about supply and demand, and that they have the market there for it. But like solar, you're going to see battery pricing come down as competition comes out. The Solar Edge battery is fairly compatible. The LG Prime battery is fairly compatible, and I mean they're comparable to if you were looking at, say, a Generac generator. The difference is that you don't need to fuel these things. They're not going to break down. There's no moving parts, and they're powered by the sun. But they're expensive right now, and pricing will come down. But that's how it is when you're early adoption or early marketplace. They're just changing and putting the science into it and the brain power. And there's a lot of R&D going into it, which causes the prices to start off high. But even in the last 2 years, we've seen them come down maybe about 10%, 15%. So I think year over year, you'll see some dropping in cost.
Yeah, no, it's great to see the battery technology. We're seeing a lot of Canadian companies jump into the space. We did a battery storage episode on Virtual Green Drinks back in July. I'll share the playlist there so folks can go back and watch that. It's a great one. It's great to see the Canadian businesses kind of jumping in there, and there's quite a ways. We have one of our members working on that as well. So last question here from Bill, and then we'll sort of let you take a little bit of a break since there's been quite a bit. He's wondering about delivery fees, delivery charges. So the provincial regulations don't allow credits to offset those charges. So is that from your understanding?
That's a little bit incorrect. So when you look at the delivery line of your hydro bill, there's a fixed portion of that, and there's a portion that's charged by the kilowatt hour. So Hydro Ottawa is $29 and change for the fixed rate. And then you're charged 1.483 cents per kilowatt hour for the transmission portion. That portion of your bill can be offset by solar. Anything that's charged by the kilowatt hour on your bill is offset by solar and can get a credit.
Great. Well, Phil, you've been great. We had some great questions. I've got a couple more, but we'll let you take a little bit of a break. So I know you've been on the hot seat for about an hour now. So lots of questions firing at you, and you've had some great answers. And just a reminder to stop share, and then we'll get a little bit from Mark. But we'll come back to you, and we'll also maybe hear from your partner Pete there once we've had a chance to hear from Mark. So thanks again for a great presentation, and
you are welcome.
Some great Q&A there too. So hang tight, take a little break, and
I will.
And we'll come back to you shortly here. So thanks again. So next up we have Mark Aselstein, and he's been a software engineer for over 20 years. He has contributed software used in classrooms, air traffic control centers, telecommunications, embedded devices, and most of the world's phones. He has experience in robotics, control systems, telecommunications, virtualization, IoT, and cloud, specializing in open source solutions. So his love for technology spills over into the environment, and he's going to talk about his recent installation of a solar array at his home. So welcome in, Mark. Thanks for joining us. Really nice to have a homeowner to chat a little bit about your experience going solar.
Thanks. How's my volume?
Yeah, you're coming through.
Great. All right. Yeah, thanks for the introduction. The interesting part with the experience and the job that I have, I get to see both sides of the equation. So, somebody mentioned the Ford Lightning truck in the chat. I work with Ford on their vehicles. So some of the technology in there is stuff I'm quite familiar with. Quick introduction about myself. So yeah, I'm a principal technologist with a company called Wind River. It's actually a California-based company that produces embedded operating systems used on pretty much anything safety critical. So things like traffic lights, airplanes, all over the place. And one of the things we always claim is most exciting is all the US Mars rovers run our operating system. And more recently, the Mars helicopter runs Linux and uses the platform that I work on. I have 2 teams. I cycle year round. I'm concerned about climate change, and I'm a maker. And these things all sort of come together with wanting to have solar and wanting to experience this new way of powering my house and powering the devices in my house. So I want to just go through a few things about my home so that you'd have an idea that maybe it matches what your residence looks like. And I think based on a lot of the questions, things like metal roof. We had our metal roof installed in 2010, and then we installed solar in 2020. The metal roof was said to last 60 years, but we'll see how that's doing. So far, it looks the same as the day it was installed, and now it has solar on it. It's a detached home, 2,400 square feet, built in 1999. It has a 200 amp service with a finished basement that uses full height insulation. So from the floor all the way up to the rafters in the basement is insulated, as well as an inch of XPS foam on the floor. Metal roof. We have 4 people that live in the house, so 2 adults and 2 teens. We have 0 EVs at the moment, but we do have three e-bikes. My summer one and my winter one, as well as my wife's. We have a standard set of appliances that are all approaching 20 years, including a front load washer. Just for fun, I went around and counted the number of light bulbs in my house the other day, and we have 102 light bulbs of varying types. We just replaced our high efficiency builder furnace that was 21 years old with a new natural gas furnace plus a cold climate air source heat pump. So we're now dual fuel. And I don't have numbers yet for the new setup, but the numbers that I'll be talking about today are based on the old setup, which was a natural gas furnace. So our average annual consumption is a 4 megawatt usage of electricity. And again, that was before the installation of the cold climate air source heat pump. So I think the first thing before going solar is always figuring out what your motivations are for going solar. So in my case, I was financially capable of doing it. We had a near optimal roof, so we're almost facing perfectly south. We're a little bit to the southeast, but pitch-wise, roof size, everything else was near perfect. We have a bigger plan, so the eventual cold climate air source heat pump, which just happened last week, and eventually to move out of an ICE vehicle into an EV. The available physical capacity of our roof was important. So the roof was bigger than our electricity usage based on 400 watt panels. There's still actually a little bit of capacity, even though we already went for a system that was about 150% of our usage. Financially sound investment, but I'm not necessarily too concerned about return on investment. We do a lot of things in life without actually being concerned about return on investment. And for me, solar was not about knowing the exact date in which I would get my money's worth, but knowing that it would happen within the lifespan of the panels going on. And at the time when I actually put on solar, the net metering fee that Hydro Ottawa was charging was $19. So it went from 19 to 14 and now to 0. And that makes a big difference in the ROI. But I'll touch on that in a little bit. Curiosity, obviously solar panels have dropped in price and become more commonplace. So I was curious, and I'm a bit of a data geek. So I like collecting data. So having a solar system is another source of interesting data for myself. I have no patience for waiting for government change. Today we've talked about incentives and other things. Phil covered some of that in his presentation. My view is that government will play a role in dealing with climate change, but it's up to us to actually do something. And if anything, I would prefer that the government just stop subsidizing things that compete against options that I want select. And the net metering fee or net generation fee was one of those things where, you know, they were charging a fee for us, and then at the same time, City of Ottawa, who owns Hydro Ottawa, was offering free parking and park and ride parking lots for OC Transpo, and I see that as a subsidy. And meanwhile, I was being charged for something that essentially was not causing any additional fee to be or any additional money to be spent by Hydro Ottawa to support my decision to go solar. I wanted to be able to demonstrate to others that there was a way to generate the fuel basically needed for my house, fuel being electricity in this case. And I wanted to be able to discuss solar PV with firsthand experience. So we often talk about things without actually having firsthand experience, and it doesn't always come across as genuine, but you know, having a solar system, when people ask questions, I'm able to, you know, it's my opinion that may or may not be the same as other people's opinion, but at least I can have an opinion that's informed, and hopefully that can help other people come to their own informed decisions and thinking. So I don't think I ever showed Phil this, but I actually had solar before I spoke with the guys at Demand Renewables for my install. I was bored one summer, and so I built a solar furnace, basically. It was a small box with a plexiglass screen in front. Had a fan in it that was computer controlled that would come on when the heat got to a certain temperature. On days when it was -23 and sunny, so lots of times in January, there would be 80 degrees Celsius at the top of the box that would be pumped into the fresh air intake at the side of my house. I'm sure my neighbors weren't too pleased about it, and the solar that I have now looks a lot better than what this did, but it provided me interesting data before I did decide to go solar. And you'll actually notice in the picture, you can see my hydrometer, and I'll show a picture of that now that there's hydro or sorry, a solar PV system on the house. But anyway, I thought I'd put this in there for a chuckle for Phil.
That's awesome, Mark. That's really cool, actually. Sorry, go ahead. That's really cool.
So Phil already sort of went over this, but I'll go over, you know, when we did our solar, generally this was the steps that we did. So first was, again, understanding our own motivations for wanting to install solar PV. Again, I'm a geek, so I did lots of research into trends and made sure that basically my expectations and my motivations could be met. And then I researched some local installers. At the time, there was 0 government grants to go or financial incentives or assistance. But again, I wasn't about to wait for government to support my decision. We contacted several installers. In the end, I met Phil and Pete and provided them information such as my hydro bills. And they came back with an information packet similar to what Phil was showing, where there's topographical maps and whatnot of your home and full simulation of the sun over 365 days. And basically they tell you roughly what your solar production is expected to be with the system that you plan on installing. There was a small, again, Phil covered this, but Hydro Ottawa came by with a small van, parked outside my house for about an hour and a half. I gave them $75 for the privilege, and they told me that I could support a system up to, I was only asking for a system up to 10 kilowatt peak, knowing that that was going to be more than what we were going for. And then, yeah, the structural review was also done before the solar was installed. And that structural review, you actually need that to supply to your home insurance. So make sure you get a copy of that. I actually forgot about doing that until actually only a few months ago, and had to bug Pete and Phil to get that piece of paper so I could give it to my insurance provider. Then we signed the contract. They completed the system install, and the Hydro Ottawa does the meter swap. In my case, that was outside of the deal that I had with Demand, so it was an additional $1,000 fee. And yeah, the ESA inspections and everything else, though, that was all covered in the contract with Demand. And then finally, probably the hardest part was the system was installed, the meter was swapped, and we had to wait for several days. And with COVID going on, it actually extended fairly longer than I was hoping, and I was probably more anxious than I should have been. But finally got the approval, and then the system was commissioned. So yeah, in the information packet, I don't know what they look like today. They might have changed, but the one that Phil, or I think it was Pete, presented to me, included things like a LiDAR map, picture from a satellite, where very close representation of the size of the roof, and you can actually see the outline of the layout of the panels that I was going to get. So basically a grouping of 9 and then 4 going across the top of the roof. And then a predicted, a simulated production graph for each month of the year. And there was other information included in the packet as well, but basically enough to help you figure out whether or not, your expectations for the system that you're going to get installed we're going to be able to be met. And in the end, our system, what does it look like? So our system, again, only using 4 megawatts in a year. We did not require a huge system. So a 5.2 kilowatt peak. So basically on the sunniest day of the year with temperatures that aren't really hot and at the middle of the day when the sun's at the highest, I could expect to get a maximum of 5.2 kilowatts out of the system at that specific point in time. The system includes 13 Hanwha Q cells, 400 watts each, Solar Edge HD inverter with power optimizers, similar to the pictures that Phil had shown in his presentation. Predicted first year production was 6.6 megawatt hours, or in this case, 6,623 kilowatt hours. And the cost was approximately 16,000 with tax included. And it was commissioned on July 22nd, 2020. So the system now roughly just shy of a year and a half old. So at this point, the lifetime production from yesterday was 8.35 megawatt hours. First year production was 6.1 megawatt hours. I'll touch on why that number is lower than the predicted 6.6. And I'll put the link in the chat afterwards, but I do make my site public. A lot of Solar Edge users do, you have the option to make your data public, or some of your data public. And back to my original motivation about being able to discuss and share my experience, I do make the monitoring information public. So yeah, I'll put that link in the chat later on, so you can take a look if you want. So originally, when Nick asked me to present, he just said, "Hey, you can just present a few pictures." So this was my original presentation. So the system comes in my case came on a trailer that was left out in front of the house, that very reminiscent of IKEA flat pack furniture. In this case, it was one big box with Q cells written on it that contained all the panels. I think they'd actually only filled about half the box. They had filled the remaining part of the box with some of the other equipment needed to install. You can see the rails coming out the front there of the trailer. I think it was the next day after the trailer arrived, the guys came to start putting the system on my roof. I do have a metal roof. It's not standing seam. It is it's more reminiscent of what a shingle looks like. And we had previously talked to the manufacturer of the metal roof to ensure that the anchoring system was going to be acceptable and not have any negative repercussions on the warranty and whatnot. As Phil said, it's basically a lag bolt with a rubber grommet on it that gets squished down into the metal, and it goes into the trusses underneath. So the guys spent, I think it was about the better part of 2 days to complete the installation. Yeah, it was fairly straightforward. I'm always fairly involved with anything going on with my home, so I was probably bugging them more than anything, asking questions and making sure that everything was up to my expectations. And I think the final result was, it looks really good. Our house is fairly close to the street, so you actually have to look up fairly, I think a lot of people probably go by the house without even noticing that we have solar. But if they do notice, I think it doesn't detract from the home's appearance. I think it looks pretty good. I have had, the snow does slide off my panels to a certain extent, and it does unfortunately catch a little bit on my ice, my snow breakers at the front here, but it's been fine. I haven't had any issues. And the panels in winter, January and February, basically produced, I think, maybe 150, or sorry, not even 100 kilowatts. So a few days of sun in summer would account for all of the production of January and February. So you basically just don't worry about production in January and February. It's you're not going to get much in Ottawa. This is what my system looks like. So the first picture, you can see the conduit that comes off the rooftop, comes to the front of the house and then tucks in behind the east trough to head down to the meter. Part of doing the installation, I also, at the same time, asked for a 240 volt, 40 amp socket to be put in my garage for the future EV. In the picture in the middle, you can see the disconnect. So I actually have the inverter in the basement. And so the conduit comes in, you can see at the bottom, on the bottom left here is where the conduit goes into the house, goes down to the inverter, comes back up as AC into the shutoff, and then back down into the house. And in my case, we added a pony panel because my breaker was already full. And so yeah, then it comes down into the pony panel, which is connected basically and joins with the rest of the panel to supply energy to the house. Or if I'm not using all of the power via the magic of net metering, it goes out to the grid, and the grid acts like my giant battery for me. Oh, the other box that you see there, of course, on the right was the inverter, and below that is actually the energy monitor, which is yet to be hooked up. It's going to happen sometime soon. So right now I'm not fully, I don't have access to all my data just yet, but that will change soon. Yeah, again, this is the Solar Edge app that Phil went through. You can see on the left is the overview. Obviously, I took the screenshot at night, so it was 0 watts production, but that day, which was yesterday, was 22.5 kilowatt hours. For a November day, that's pretty darn good. My average consumption on a day is 10 kilowatt hours, so that's pretty much 10 kilowatt to the house and 10 kilowatt to the grid. The middle one is the physical layout of my panels, and I have it set for total. So you can see since July 22nd of 2020, each panel's produced around, on average, around 660 kilowatt hours. And if you actually go look at the, if you went back and looked at the LiDAR image, you would see that the panels down close to the dormer on my house have a little bit of shading, and you can actually see that in the physical layout. It only has 604 kilowatt hours lifetime production because it has a little bit of shading in the morning. And on the right, you can see the day's production, and below that, you can see month to month. I'm always excited when I get what I call a perfect solar day, when you get a perfect curve from top to bottom. Ottawa, it's amazing. The city will frustrate you. I'll have a perfect solar day, and then right at lunch, there'll be one cloud that goes over the house, and it ruins my curve. my kids, they laugh at me when I complain about not getting a perfect solar day because of one cloud. So some Q&A things that often come up, so I thought I'd cover them. Why only 6.1 megawatt hours in the first year and not the projected 6.6 megawatt hours? Well, I don't know if folks here know about Yao Weather Records on Twitter, but I don't even know if it's a he or she, but they post some really good statistics. And one of the statistics this year was that it was the gloomiest summer we've had on record. And you can see it, there's a big difference here. There's 395 hours of bright sunshine versus ninth place, which is 495 hours. So 100 less hours of really bright sunshine. And this was due to the forest fires out west, as well as it just being a glum summer. And if you think back to the summer and actually, like late June, I think the hours, the numbers shown here make sense. Why didn't I install a battery? We've had one power outage here that lasted more than a few hours in the last 20 years. That was due to the Ottawa tornado that passed by just a few hundred meters from my house. So basically the grid, with net metering, the grid becomes my battery. And as long as the grid doesn't go down, I have no need for battery backup. And eventually, when we do get an EV, it probably will have vehicle to grid capabilities. And that will be enough to cover those few times where we do have a power outage greater than a few hours. People always ask about ROI. Again, the system will pay for itself. I have no doubt within the 25-year, sort of minimum life expectancy that it will pay for itself. But I'll cover some of the financials, again, not necessarily at the ROI, but some of the more involved numbers in how your bill would look in a regular month, just in a few slides. Is there any production in winter? Nothing significant. Again, January and February amounts the same as a few sunny non-winter days. How does net metering work? Basically, again, the grid becomes your battery. All credits expire after the oldest one becomes 12 months old. So if I overproduce in July, that's my starting point. If I don't use those credits by the time June comes around, when we hit July 1st, if I still have credits, then all those credits go away. So basically, you'll end up being in a cycle where you're going to start collecting credits in March, and if you don't use them generally by the end of February, then you're going to lose them. Is roughly the cadence that most people will end up falling into. But in the Q&A, I can cover more of that if you want. So as Phil said, I had a little bit of fun with Hydro Ottawa when I first started going, mostly because Hydro Ottawa provided a single line item for people that were solar net generation customers. And it made it look like the credits that they were giving me were not being calculated correctly. So I had a lot of back and forth with Hydro Ottawa. In the end, it resulted in me getting access to a bunch of information, and I was able to put together a worksheet where you can actually almost to the penny predict what your costs are going to be and what your savings are. So in the worksheet, it actually calculates if you did not have solar, this is what your bill would be. But if you have solar, these are how much credit you have and how much you'd save. Again, I can put the link in the chat afterwards. This is a screenshot of the worksheet with my data filled out, but there is also a blank one with that's basically can be used as a template. I haven't yet updated it with the subtraction of the net generation service charge. So it's still $14. So with that, brings me to the end of my presentation. Sorry if I'm a bit rambly. I'm used to doing highly technical talks. So speaking about solar is not my usual place. Yeah, I'll pass it over to Nick and see if there's any questions that came up on the chat.
Yeah, thanks.
You did great, Mark. You did great.
Great.
Thanks.
Yeah, great presentation. Thanks so much for sharing some of those details and what it's like, and nice to see that first one that you built yourself. Very interesting. Very cool to kind of do it yourself, DIY that, and then see the professional system. So Alpesh is wondering if you have significant overcapacity in solar, why not get rid of natural gas completely and get an electrical furnace backup? Any thoughts there?
So I hummed and hawed on the heat pump. So I first started looking at the Mitsubishi Zuba, and which is good. They say down to -30, and then have a resistive coil backup heat. In the end, I opted for a natural gas furnace and an air source heat pump that was good down to -20. Basically, my thinking is in Ottawa, we have roughly 100 winter days. Of those, if you do 24-hour periods, you get around, let's say 10 to 20 that are below -20. So I'm going from 100% natural gas usage probably down to about only 20%. So my goal is not, with this house, if I was building from scratch, I might go for net zero. It's a Minto standard house. Going for net zero is a big aspirational goal. I'm okay being a little bit short. I'm a hell of a lot better than I was. And it's a step. It was just, for us, it was the best decision based on pricing and other aspects. I'm sure if you ask 5 people, they give you 5 different answers on which route they would go. But it was a very difficult decision, and that's the option that I went for.
Yeah, no, you're quite an inspiration, Mark. It's great to see folks, taking the leap and going that extra mile, and that's what we need, right? If you look at the Ottawa Energy Evolution documents, and how many retrofits and how much solar and how many heat pumps we need to put in, it's in the hundreds of thousands. So it's great to have homeowners who are gung ho and taking that extra mile. And I really appreciate your time to come on to Green Drinks and talk a little bit more about your experience. So thanks so much. We've got some general questions. I kind of want to open it up a little bit to some of our other members. I know we've got Pete on the call. We've also got Roderick from Rocco Industries. So Pete, why don't you come in, and then maybe we'll get Roderick to talk a little bit about his product too. But Pete is Phil's partner over at Demand. Did you want to say a couple words about some of the work you're doing and talk a little bit about solar?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're coming in.
Yeah, no, good. First off, thanks, Mark. That was a really good presentation. It's actually nice to see the systems that we install over time, and I remember yours very fondly. That was quite the good time for us. Just a couple of comments about what you had mentioned there. It's in terms of the production stuff. So our system does, as you indicated, predict annual energy. It looks at decades worth of previous weather patterns and things like that. And I would I would say that even on a below average year, you should be making your numbers. To have the absolute worst year in the last recorded history is a little bit unfortunate, but certainly I'm proud of the way the system performed, even at its certainly with the equipment that we use in I guess our worst case year over the last, I think it was since 1953 or something. So just a couple, I guess, real quick things. I wasn't planning on speaking, but just a few things that Mark alluded to as well, and Phil did as well in his presentation. So this work that Phil really championed himself, and then I know Mark got involved as well with all the and certainly SmartNet helping to get the net metering fee initially reduced and then gone is a really huge achievement. So bravo and well done for everybody involved there. Mark mentioned it was actually a 2-stage process, so we thought we did some really good work when we got it down from 19 to 15, and that wasn't that long ago. It was, Mark's system was in 2020, and it was $19 at that time. Then it went down to 14, and we thought that was at least a really good step in the right direction. But now to have it fully removed, to be in concert with the rest of the province essentially is a huge win. So we're very, very proud of that and very happy about that. One of the other things I wanted to mention about going solar right now and why it's a great time, I guess, is there is, some government grant funding that is currently available. And that is, a up to $5,000 grant for efficiency improvements for your home. So if your PV system is 5 kilowatts or greater, you can get access to a $5,000 grant. So that is something that from the feds that came in April, which is something that we're extremely excited about and has definitely spurned our expansion and a large reason of why we were so busy last year and certainly moving forward. So that's a great thing. And there are some really cool other things coming. And Nick, I don't know if you were going to be mentioning, I think we talked a little bit about it this week about some of the programs that are available in Ottawa and some of the things that are coming online, not only in Ottawa, but across the province. But I guess for this talk, maybe mentioning some things about the loan program and things that the city of Ottawa are now doing to make efficiency improvements on vogue and certainly a lot easier. So just a really great time to be looking at the technology. And Phil already put it in the chat. If you're interested in understanding what you could do with your home, certainly let us know. That's something that we do every day. It's all pro bono. Worst case, you're going to understand exactly what your particular home could manufacture in terms of PV energy and what it would cost you. So, let us know, fill in our form, and we'd be more than happy to look at that.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. We really appreciate
Nick,
you.
Can I just jump in on some of the questions in the chat real quick?
Yeah, well, let me just we'll chat a little bit about the incentives, then we'll come back. We'll do the last few rounds of questions there. So just hold tight there for a sec, Phil. So I don't want to steal the thunder from next Tuesday. We're going to be doing a whole webinar on heat pumps and the Better Home Ottawa website. It is live now. I just put it into chat, and we're going to have someone from the City of Ottawa. Janice Ashworth is going to be around to talk about the Better Home Loans program, which is a zero interest loan that the City of Ottawa is offering. And it's a new type of mechanism because it doesn't go on your person, it goes on the actual property. So you can take a look into that. There's also the Greener Homes grant, which a lot of people know of by now. It's the $5,000 grant that both of them start with an energy audit. We did a seminar on energy audits back in May, so check out our YouTube channel. I'll put a link for that as well. And surf around, check out they're taking applications for the Better Home Loans program. So, if you are looking at doing a deep energy retrofit at your home, this is definitely a good time to do it. So I don't want to steal too much thunder from our presentation on Tuesday. If you want to learn more, sign up for that presentation. It's going to be, I think we've got about 500 people signed up for that one so far. So it's going to be a very good event on Tuesday at 6 p.m. I know we have Roderick on the call as well. Roderick from Rocco Industries, did you want to hop in and just say a little bit about what you're doing there with your side panels? Don't see him as of yet, so let's circle back on Roderick. But check out our member pages. Rocco Industries has a new product that can go on the side of your house and do solar siding. He's just doing the test phasing now, so definitely worth a thought if your roof can't take solar for any reason. And he's saying he's going to hop on next time and talk a little bit about that. So no problem. So Phil, did you want to come back on? And we've got a few more questions to kind of roll through before the end here.
Yeah. So question about virtual solar. I'm not sure if that's going to happen. Right now, the OEB is actually, there's like a public consultation for third-party ownership, so leasing, solar leasing. The issue with virtual solar, and this is another one that I don't really like, because you end up having massive developers that come in and just kind of take over the market, and you're buying energy at a percentage that's lower than you're getting from the grid. But it's tricky. You end up taking up a lot of good land to pump in. Rooftop or ground mount on your own property makes sense to me, and it kind of keeps the industry going and keeps out massive developers. That's what happened with the feed-in tariff. Like if you look at the Grid Watch app for Ontario and you look at the different facilities, all the 100 megawatt solar projects in this province are owned by groups like Samsung. They don't have a presence here. They came in, they jumped in on the program, and that's what's going to happen with virtual solar as well. You'll have big developers come in, build the systems, disappear. And then there's always issues with maintenance and stuff like that. And then the question to about how much longer is the 5K? Who do we say if our home is a candidate? So there is, if you just Google Greener Homes Grant, it'll bring you to a link and you apply. It's very simple. You need to know who you are. So your name, your address, your date of birth, your phone number, email address. You need to have a scanned copy of your driver's license and your property tax ID number. And then there's a drop-down box to choose an energy auditor. I'm a senior citizen in this market. I knew that it was going to be a hot mess when they released this program, and it has been a hot mess. So me and Peter, actually last year when they first announced the loan in November, started interviewing different energy audit companies. So we're now partnered in quotes with a group called Ridge Energy. They've done over 200,000 energy audits. And what we're able to do there is, people have been applying for the grant in June and just now getting booked their energy audit. Our clients applied in June and 3 weeks later had an energy audit because we were able to facilitate it directly with Ridge Energy. So that's something that we can do for anybody who's interested. And somebody asked how long is it on for? There's 700,000 grants, which sounds like a lot, but that's across the whole country, and it's not just for solar. It's for building envelope, it's for windows and doors, HVAC installation, etc. So it is a very limited and sought after program. I think the first month they got something like 96,000 applications. So 700,000 seems like a lot, but at the same time, that's across province, across country, across multiple industries. And then there may also be a federal loan coming. It was supposed to be launched this summer, and then we went to an election, so it was paused. And if you go to the CMHC, if you type in Greener Home Loan, CMHC in Google, it'll bring you to their website. And now they say that they anticipate an announcement this fall, so sometime between now and the end of December. And that's supposed to be for $40,000, interest-free, 10 years, but it is on the person and on the mortgage, not on the property, like the Ottawa one is. Any more questions, or do you think we've pretty much covered everything off?
I think so. If folks want to put up their hand, if they want to ask anything directly, I can unmute them. Let me just go through the questions here. I mean, I was a little bit curious about the EV charging. So how are you getting exactly that 25% extra with your system? Maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And it's a bit of a segue into our next Green Drinks, where we're going to talk about electric vehicles.
Yeah, so the level 2 charger from SolarEdge is something called Solar Boost. So it's like a 7.6 kilowatt output inverter or charger, but it can go to 9.6 kilowatts with Solar Boost. So you can do charge on excess energy only. So it's charging strictly by solar, which is great for the environment. And if your car's sitting there over the day, it's great. You won't get as high output, on a day like today that you would. And in that case, you could put it for full power. And what that'll do is take excess energy from the solar and then also pull from the grid and get you that up to that 9.6 kilowatt output, which will charge you faster than that typical level 2 charger. Does that answer that okay?
Pamela was wondering, technology is changing all the time. Anything amazing on the horizon to wait for, or is this the best time to jump into solar?
So yeah, I mean, I quickly said it's the best time to jump into solar because I didn't want to type out a novel for her, but if she's still listening, if you follow solar like we do, live, breathe, and eat it, if you have a news aggregate app or you're on Reddit and you follow any of that stuff, once every couple months, there's an announcement of some university somewhere around the world who's like killed the efficiency on solar panels and it's going to be the new great thing. And then nothing ever happens because it's extremely expensive to break into a new market. And, the 21.6% efficiencies that the really good panels like LG and the new Q cells have are super efficient. They're reliable. They're made by bankable companies. The panels that we sell now are split cell technology. So if it's a 72 cell panel, it's actually 144 split cells, making the top and the bottom of the panel independent of each other. So if there's snow on the top of the panel or the bottom, it'll still produce energy. So, like Q cells has 12 bus bars in the back of their panels compared to 4 as some of the other guys. So it's about choosing the best of the panels that are available today and the best quality and efficiencies that are available today. And that's what we do.
No, it's great work. No, it's fabulous to hear about so much of the stuff going on. Mark's just wondering, do you think the $40,000 federal loan will happen in the next year? So I guess before the end of 2022.
Like they said, it was supposed to launch in the summer. I mean, the only thing that gives me a little bit of hope is that last year in about February, me and Pete noticed that there was a call to action for the government was hiring somebody. Like they had put out a hiring call for people to design the program and to implement the portal and stuff. So we know that they're spending money on it. It was supposed to be announced. It was approved in the budget. The budget got assent, and then they called an election. So they say that it's coming. It's supposed to come in the fall now. So it should be out by next year, or by beginning of 2022. But this is the government, and like we tell people, you can't take our word for it. We got to wait and see what happens. So I think it would be a mistake for them not to do something, especially after going to COP26 and saying, all these things that we need to do and all these commitments we have. So I think it would be a huge mistake to not launch that loan.
Okay, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, maybe a staffing issue and things like that, but we do know that the City of Ottawa have launched their zero interest loans. So hope that many folks join us Tuesday. So why don't we get some final words? What are some final words for anybody who's just kind of thinking about going solar, wants to kind of get into it? What are some thoughts? And Mark, we can open that up for you. Why don't we go to Mark first, and then we'll go to Phil. And yeah, just some final thoughts to anybody out there who's sort of thinking about dabbling into solar. What would you recommend, and what kind of final thoughts would you give them?
I would say if you're thinking about going solar, make sure you have your plan set. Like, figure out everything you want. Do you want a battery? Do you not want a battery? Are you going to have an EV? Are you not going to have an EV? Do it all at once. Don't do part of it, and then as you're halfway through, think that you have additional things that you want to target. Because that's just going to add complication and cost. So yeah, figure out what you want and then go for it.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Thanks so much, Mark. And once again, really appreciate your presentation and jumping on and showing us those pictures. And what an inspiration for sure. So Phil, I know you've done a lot of talking, but some final words for those that put on your solar superhero costume, and give us final Phil words to say, hey, what about those people that want to go solar? What would you sort of say? How, you're in a pub and you're saying, someone's saying, hey, I'm interested in solar. What's the elevator pitch for them?
I go, okay, let's order. We'll get a couple shots. And no, I'm kidding. Yeah, so it starts with you investigating, and like Mark alluded to, having just that thought process in your mind. What I realize is that solar is very daunting. People don't understand the process. They don't know how much it's going to cost. They're concerned about the technology. They're concerned about it, recycling it. They're concerned about the longevity of the system. They're concerned about the longevity of us. So what I would say is, send me an email, reach out to us on that link that I put in there. And, there's no cost for us educating you. And like Mark said, in the proposal, it's gotten even more in depth. Now they're about 20 pages long. So it takes about 45 minutes for us. So it's not just about, here's a quote that's 2 pages long. This is the system. This is what we think it's going to do, and the cost. We really walk you through. We're extremely transparent about everything. Costs, our grid, kind of the fluffy numbers that you'll see out there. And then, we show you the losses. We show you the kind of the homework behind the answer that the teacher would ask you for. So if you're interested in solar, reach out. We're not pushy. Your system is not going to make or break our business. It doesn't matter to us, but I love to educate people. I love to teach people about solar, so that when you're at a bar and someone's talking smack, you have the knowledge and the capability to fight back and have that conversation and educate people, whether or not you've done it yourself.
Absolutely. No, thanks so much. Really appreciate the presentation. Thanks to you and to Pete for the great work you're doing. We're really glad to have you members of the SmartNet Alliance, pushing to move towards that sustainable economy and, get more and more homes, with solar arrays on them. That's the goal. So I'm sorry that we've shared a lot of links, so I'm not sure exactly which one the person in chat's wanting. I do know that if you do want to save the chat, you can hit the 3 little buttons beside your chat chat function, and there's a little save chat. So that'll save everything onto your computer and you'll get all the links there. So I'll give everybody a couple of minutes here at the end to do that if they want to save the chat. I want to thank so much. And yeah, it looks like they're asking for the email for Demand Renewables there, Phil. So maybe add that in again. So once again, I'll leave the screen open for a couple more minutes here while we at the end, so people can capture anything in chat. You've got a couple more chances to join us before the end of the year to talk a bit more renewable technologies. Tuesday, we talk heat pumps with the City of Ottawa and Better Home Loans and Better Home Ottawa website. And then in December, we talk electric vehicles with the Electric Vehicle Council of Ottawa. So we're all about those renewable technologies. We know there's a lot of heavy lifting going on at COP26, but we have to do our part here at home. So let's learn about those renewable technologies. Let's adopt them into our lifestyle, into our homes, you know, in our cars. And want to say thanks so much to everybody for joining us again. And we hope to see you out again. So once again, this is Nick from SmartNet Alliance. You've been watching Virtual Green Drinks, and we'll hope to see you again. Good night, everybody.